And as always on a Thursday, straight after Kent Tonight, we have a brand new episode of Kent Film Club, where we look at the impact certain films have had on our guests' lives. Well, joining me now is the show's presenter, Deacy. Chris, as always, we'll talk about what you've been watching. Anything in particular that stands out this week?
Well, I was really impressed last Friday to see a documentary about Michael Powell, who was born in Beaksbourne, just outside Canterbury, in 1905. And in later years, he became good friends with Martin Scorsese, who presented the documentary that I saw at the Curzon in Canterbury called Made in England. You have it on the screen. And this was so impressive because Scorsese had been a hero of mine. I've written on him, I've written books about him. And I knew that Michael Powell was a huge influence, but this is a film where he talks about how Powell's work in the 1940s with films like A Canterbury Tale, very fittingly, A Matter of Life and Death, a great celestial fantasy, and the film that I actually saw as part of the Canterbury Christchurch University Film Club that was showing at the Curzon on Monday, which was the life and death of Colonel Blimp, all had an impact on Scorsese's films. And he talks about, and he shows scenes from like The Red Shoes, which was from the late 1940s, interspersed with scenes from Raging Bull or The Age of Innocence. So, you know, for me, it was a real education.
And a very successful man, Mr. Powell. Do you think filmmakers basing their work in Kent today have a chance of getting a similar sort of acclaim, or is it a pedestal too high to reach?
Well, do you know, there's two ways of looking at that, because Michael Powell was, you know, part of this wonderful collaboration in the 1940s, but fell out of favour in the 1950s. I think he was quite an iconoclastic filmmaker and didn't really work within the studio system. But he was rediscovered later. So the answer to the question really is, it can take time. And it was funny to hear Scorsese talking about Beaksbourne, you know, and sort of talking about the impact of Canterbury and the cathedral on his work, and how scenes in A Canterbury Tale, which we've often talked about on the Kent Film Club, were shot in the cathedral, indeed were shown to an audience in the nave of the cathedral at the time. So in a way, it can take time. The passage of time, and all of Powell and Pressburger's films are about that, the ruminations on the past, the way, certainly with Colonel Blimp, you sort of see that, you know, character evolve from the dashing young officer at the time of the Boer War to this quite reactionary figure by the outbreak of the Second World War. And so the films are about an England, and a Kent to a large extent as well, that has passed us by.
And it's something we're always quite amazed to see whenever we have that Kent connection over in Hollywood. It feels quite special to be talking about. What about any other Kent-based productions? We've talked about them a lot. There's plenty out there, but some that you'd sort of recommend to us, I suppose.
Well, Vindication Swim, which we were talking about on this programme just a few months ago, is still showing in some of the cinemas around the county. So I haven't actually seen that, but there's been lots of films about swimming, and even a new Disney film that's coming up that seems similarly modelled, which has one of the actresses from the Star Wars film, Daisy Ridley, in that. So I think that Kent, as we often say on this programme, has all these nuggets. But for me, what was so weird is to be somebody who has been immersed in the language of Scorsese, to be familiar with Powell and Pressburger, but to be sitting in a Canterbury cinema and watching a Canterbury from 50, 60 years ago unfolding before my eyes, and to see that
like a
charting.
Tailored experience. Yeah, what
I was the only one in there. It was
that?
just like for me.
All of it coming together. Right, we haven't got much time left, Chris, but what's coming up in Kent Film Club in a few minutes' time?
So we have William French, who's a cameraman, and one of the films that he's picked, I actually saw 3 nights ago at the Curzon, which was Civil War. It's the second time I've seen it, and he has some wonderful choices tonight, including some films that have just been, you know, made in the last couple of years.
Amazing. Some exciting stuff to look forward to in just a few minutes' time. Chris, thank you as ever.
Thank you, Abby.
Well, that's all we've got time for Kent Tonight live here on KMTV. As I said, there's more news made just for Kent throughout the evening, starting with Kent Film Club. I'll hand over to Deacy now. That's all from me. Bye-bye.